How's everybody doing this morning or afternoon?
Doing great.
Good.
It's still
Hey,
morning.
Jeff, doing good.
Good.
Still very much morning here.
Yeah. So, Richard, you're out in the West Coast?
Yep, I'm in Paradise. I mean, Monterey Bay.
Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, I'm out on the West Coast.
Okay. Yeah, I chose this time initially just because I know we have that mentor guest speaker thing in about 2 hours, so it gives us a chance to talk and then decompress or what have you before we move over to that meeting. And this meeting is scheduled for like 40 minutes because it's a free account. We can sign back on if we want. But I posted in the chat, some of the thoughts I had last night about what we may be wanting from this group and supporting one another and learning from one another, that kind of thing. I don't have a real agenda. I think the agenda is going to be kind of established through all of us. This isn't my baby. I didn't create this idea. I just kind of lit the fire. It's going to take all of us to kind of feed the flame to keep us going and, to encourage each one of us and move forward and bring the kindling and then the big chunks of wood so we can really just kind of launch our individual careers. Does anyone have any thoughts on how they'd like to start this meeting? Do we want to go around and introduce ourselves or anything like that? Or, I know, Richard, you've had some thoughts about it, and I see you making some cereal. I hear you. I'm hitting
No, I'm in my nut mix now.
Oh, okay.
See, I come at it from a different perspective from a lot of people I've seen in the cohort. I've been writing for my first album. They'll be 25 years old next year. So, and I got 25 albums to my credit and over 3,000 pieces in a catalog of something completely different. And it's all instrumental music. So writing with other people is another story. And the way I write is not really writing. I call it creating. I sit down at the keyboards, multiple keyboards, and it comes out. And when I'm at a piano, it's a whole nother story. It's even better. So does this cohort help me in writing, learning how to collaborate with somebody? Well, one, I work in a different level, or different, not level, but different.
Creative style.
Creative style, yeah, that's the best word. Yeah. And so attempting to even find, I've attempted, reached out to a few people and it just doesn't work out, just for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. So I've said, okay, we stay with the instrumental route, since every person we've seen says instrumental cues are 70% of all stuff. So let's make it happen. Mm-hmm. If we're writing 70% of all the cues, then why not somebody focus in on it? And so I just started looking at Taxi. When Taxi first started up in 92 or 93, I was actively writing then. My first album hadn't come out yet, but I was already starting to write. And it was a songwriter aspect geared. Now they're more instrumentally geared because that's where a lot of the placements are coming from. So I've started looking at that. I've seen a lot of Taxi videos in the last 3 weeks and just started expanding from there. Steve Collins done a great one with Dean Krippain. He did 2 of them. So, I mean, and Steve's a guy who I've yet to really connect with, but he's a guy who's got his stuff all over the place in music libraries and things like that. Now I've started collecting books on the subject, reading some of these books, and we've got a couple more coming in the next day or two. And this is something that we all, if we want to understand how this business works from this aspect, we need to look at that, because it's a different approach than writing songs and pitching the songs. A lot of these music supervisors and the libraries don't want to see individuals pitching themselves. Almost everyone I've seen of these videos, they say, no, you can try it and maybe you'll get through, but and so it's like, okay, so it's we have to learn, go through this ourselves, each one of us, but there are sources where at least the information's there. A lot of these sources are there. So that's my thought, and that's what my thought was, because I've done a lot of, I'm a good researcher. I got a buttload of research done, names and places. Not that I've gone and explored each one, but I signed onto a list before this cohort even started, where there's a new lead every day. And
have you been able to take advantage of any of those leads? Have you submitted?
I've started, learning everything else, how to meta tag your music. If you're going to send it out, make sure it's meta tagged properly. Well, I've been meta tagging all my, right now they're looking at Christmas, and so I meta tagged my 4 Christmas albums and got them ready to be sent out, and sending them out. Cody Partridge, who we had on the cohort to start with, one of the early ones, said, just send me albums. He didn't send singles, so he said, send me albums. And he says, and it doesn't matter, just send them. So, and he's part of the super group, I don't know, what was that called, the super group or something, out of Canada. And so I got everything ready and shipped them out. I haven't heard anything, but, and I don't expect to. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Don't expect to hear from them right away. And, the instant success, I hear from Taxi, one guy dropped something. He says, the name of the book is, what's the name of the book? Write, submit, repeat, forget, repeat, And so he said, I wrote something and, came back 10 years, and something that was in a library for 10 years before it even got placed. He says, but I didn't even remember it. And that's how, that's what the process may be for some of us, and so that's my thoughts. And so to be able to share it with everybody else, I'm a solo pianist. I started as a solo pianist, and I got into the electronic keyboards just because I don't have a piano myself in my house. I don't have a space for one, and so that's so that's where my music is. I've been a member of Enlightened Piano Radio since the inception, which is internet radio for solo piano. And I got 7 albums in the top 10 of the New Age charts. Over out of 25. Not a bad record, considering we only pushed out 6 of them, promoted 6 of them. So that's where I'm at, and that's the reason my thought process to help put this group together and really make it work.
Well, thanks for sharing and giving us an insight of your experience, and also possibly, I'm not going to want to diss Cathy's program at all. So,
no, I don't want to diss it at all. It's enlightened me. It enlightened me to certain things, certain aspects.
But I felt we probably, as instrumentalists, probably wanted to be able to have a venue to be able to talk to how we can encourage each other, because the program itself is great in learning lots of things, but they can't cover everything. And so we can kind of fill it in ourselves with each other on some of the trials, the successes, and your experiences like Taxi.
How many people actually belong to Taxi?
I did, but it was a few years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I registered for Taxi, and what I'm finding is that it's not that I'm really submitting, but it's giving me a good idea of what the market is looking for. So from that aspect, I think it's been helpful. Maybe we could help each other by generating yet another spreadsheet or a list of places where we can submit instrumentals, because we have all of these great lists for singer-songwriter songs.
Mm-hmm.
But for instrumentals, if we generate a list of where we can submit, what are some of the possibilities? Hey, Sam.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us.
Welcome. Yeah.
I think that would be super helpful. And I've also noticed while I was writing instrumentals during this course, I was using the theme list that Cathy gave us at the very beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of just said, okay, well, let's take these themes and translate it to an instrumental piece rather than a singer-songwriter. Because, you can write tension cues, you can write happy cues. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can write if you just look at the themes and you say, okay, instrumentally, how would I convey that emotion?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I think where I need help is knowing where to submit the instrumentals other than just Taxi. I know there's Taxi, there's a few sites, but in the same way we've been researching music supervisors, I think we need some leads on where to submit the instrumentals. Maybe Sam, maybe you've got some input there.
Yeah. I'll share a little bit about kind of my thing with like instrumental stuff, because I definitely have both. I have a whole bunch of stuff with songs, but I've also have stuff out there in the instrumental world as well. Kind of what happened with me, and I think this is just could be like the best way to go. Well, actually a couple things. I have a couple of stories of just kind of show how I got stuff through. But most recently, where I'm starting to realize, oh my gosh, this is gonna take off here is through someone else. It's that one person. Sometimes it's that one link, that kind of gets the ball rolling. But I had a guy that I met a couple of years ago here in LA that does a ton of instrumental stuff, and he has, he's one of those guys, like thousands of instrumental placements, CBS, NBC, news cues, like stuff on the Super Bowl. I mean, just, cue after cue after cue. And so I kind of befriended him, and actually I hung out with him face to face, I think a couple years ago at the NAMM show. So you just build these relationships, and it doesn't always have to be face to face. Some relationships I have are just totally online, and it's just Facebook, and and then one thing, and see, not everyone's totally into doing all this stuff, but I don't think it's as hard as it seems. But like as I get more and more presence, kind of like online, I did an interview with him. It was like the easiest thing, and we put it up in like Making Pop Music because people want to know more about licensing instrumental music. Actually, that's on my YouTube page, and all of you should watch it because his name's Eddie Wool. It's on my YouTube page. I could even go get you the link and just put it below. And he talks about licensing and cues and how to get instrumentals and how to get that all going.
That would be great.
So then what ended up happening was, as I built this relationship with him, at some point, I just kind of do this subtle thing of, hey, Eddie, whatever you need, if you're working on something or you get to the point where you got, more than you can handle, I'm your guy. It's so much of getting your foot in the door with all this stuff is collaboration and just being there to catch it, just being there to like plug into something. Mm-hmm. So I don't think when I mentioned that he sent me anything, but I just think I was on his radar. And then all of a sudden, one day he Facebook messaged me and said, I'm needing some more cues for a library I work for. And I said, what kind of stuff are they looking for? And he said, rock stuff. He said, it's for sports. And I'm like, I can do that stuff in my sleep. So I made 8 or 9 rock cues. Kind of sounds like the Foo Fighters. It's no vocals. It's guitar. It's the simplest stuff. I seriously made it so fast you wouldn't even believe. I had my drummer I told him, hey, think Foo Fighters. And I started with just a rhythm track, just just dumb, simple stuff. My drummer played over it. Then I played guitar and bass. I kind of put it all together. So Eddie said, this is what I want to do. I want to take your little 1 minute and 30-second songs, and I'm going to cut them all up into the cues because I know what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, would it be all right if we split it and I'll put my name on it too? Because he said in these music libraries, there's thousands of tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when they go to look for stuff, I mean, it could go on and on and on. He said, but what happens is certain people who start to kind of trend within like these libraries is just what they end up like grabbing because it's right there. So he said, when you go into a couple of these big libraries and type in rock cues for TV or sports, he goes, mine just are right there, and they just end up grabbing them. So I was like, sure. So he took my tracks and cut them up into like about 3 or 4 different versions. He did it really fast. So there's like a 8-second one. There's a 15-second one. And then he gave them catchy little names, and they're in a library called MIBE, M-I-B-E.
Okay.
And literally Eddie said that's his main library, and he gets placements from that. He said like every week his music's on TV or a commercial or in the background of a movie. Tons of people use the same libraries. Yeah, MIBE. So that's my story of getting those songs. And what was so bummer was I'm a huge basketball guy, and he said our rock tracks that I made and he chopped up were in the March Madness queue for this year. And March Madness is like, I'm so addicted. I watch it every year like crazy.
Not the only one.
Yeah, college basketball is just so great. So here my music was going to be in March Madness this year, and sure enough, dumb COVID cut all of March Madness. So
next year, Sam, next year.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is they're not going anywhere. They're right there. He even named them little sports cues. The names of all of them. You know what? I could probably load those up to something and show you guys. Send you a little link. Message me or DM me, and I'll try to. Because I think if you heard these, it makes so much sense, and they're so simple. And they don't have to be just rock cues. They could be little orchestral cues or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really easy to do once I had that one link. And here's the thing is everyone's shooting for the music supervisor. Like, how do I get this to the music supervisor? Sometimes it's maybe not the music supervisor, you need to like link up with. Sometimes it's someone else, it's like Eddie is not a music supervisor. He's just making a lot of tracks, and I befriended him and got pulled in. Another crazy story that I love, and I'll try to make it short. My wife says my stories go on for too long. Is that I had taken a class from UCLA extension program. It's an online class. I can't recommend this enough. Shoot. And it was not expensive. So if you look up UCLA extension, what is that? EXT. It's like kind of one thing. It's like UCLA EXT for extension. They're online courses, and you can actually, I needed to get a degree because I teach film, and I only had I majored in art in college, so I didn't major in film, but I was teaching it, and they wanted me to have at least a minor in film to keep my teaching credentials to teach film. So I went and took a bunch of these courses, and I got to pick whichever ones I want, and one of them was scoring music for video games. I was like, I'm taking that one.
Mm-hmm.
That course right there, even if you don't desire to get into video games, the guy who teaches it, the professor, is awesome. He's super plugged in. Gosh, I made so many connections, and it was just such a good thing. And I learned a bunch of stuff just about making cues and doing all this stuff anyways. I mean, some of the stuff I made for that course that were assignments, I turned into briefs that music supervisors were sending to me. So where was I going with that? So, so after I took that course, one of the other film courses I had taken, the professor was teaching and he went into movie trailers and he was talking about all about movie trailers. And this guy would just bring on guest speaker after guest speaker. And then, so when we got to the movie trailer section, the guest speaker was actually the guy that owns, what's the big trailer house here in LA? It's like the huge trailer house. It was the guy that was in charge of the music, getting the music, like the music coordinator for the biggest trailer house here in LA. And so anyways, to make this story go quicker here, I went online because I wanted to find that guy again because he was a guest speaker. I had reached out to him on the little chat board, you know, and he said, yeah, send me some of your music. Because I said, you know, it was a film class. It wasn't a music class. And I said, but hey, I make, you know, music and score and stuff like that. He said, yeah, reach out to me. So I went to try to find his email, and I was on I was on Google searching for trailer houses here, and one came up, and I thought it was it, Hollywood Trailers. It's called Hollywood Trailers. And I was just about to click off because I realized, oops, that's not it. But then I noticed the address of the Hollywood Trailers was like 3 miles from my house. I was like, what the heck? Like, because I don't live in LA in the heart of Hollywood. And like, I live in a little town called Whittier outside. And sure enough, like 3 miles from my house was a trailer house. So I was like, pfft. So I emailed that guy and I'm like, hey, this is crazy. I do music. I love, you know, trying to do music trailer stuff like that. Music for trailers. And we live like 3 miles from each other. So built a relationship with that guy just based on like, you know, hey, where are your kids going to school? And what restaurants do you like here in Whittier? Because, they were new. He said, we just moved here a couple years ago. Has the whole trailer outfit in his garage here in Whittier. He makes trailers for major motion pictures. It's like 3 miles from my house. So I just, after we built this little relationship, I just point blank asked him, I'm like, hey, I would love to take a stab at scoring a trailer. And first response was, oh, I don't really have anything. But literally 2 or 3 days later, he goes, hey, I do have something. It's an action movie. You want to take a crack at it? He goes, I can't pay you a ton, but you know, it's like, I can give you like $500. And I was like, yes, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, when the trailer came and he kind of sent everything to me and I opened it up on the computer here, I had a moment of, oh shit, what did I just volunteer for? I am so in over my head. I'm like, there's no way I could really score a movie trailer. I'm like, what am I? You know, I do that sometimes. I think I'm so ADD. I say yes to things and then later think about like, oh shoot, how am I going to do what I just volunteered for? But such a great learning experience. So I actually had the movie trailer. I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that I wouldn't share, you know, because it's a major motion picture, any of the footage with anyone. And so I got to score it. Now, he sent it to the client, and the first round, the very first comment they said was, what happened to our trailer music? Because there was temp music in there, and I replaced it. And their first comment was like, what happened to the music? And they didn't like it. And so then I was pretty defeated. So there was a day there where I was like, okay, I learned I suck at trailer music, right? And then the guy came back and said, do you want to take another run at it? I think if you did A, B, and C, I think it would slide by and they would okay it. And I said, sure. So I scrapped everything I did, completely redid it. I just like came out here and I'm like, frick, I'm going to do this. I'm just like force myself to just lock it in. And sure enough, the second one stuck. They had like 2 things they wanted to change. And that was in international release of a movie, trailers for a movie called Rogue Warfare 3. Had a couple famous actors in it. It was in like all movie theaters. So, but it was, the trailer I scored wasn't in the US. They had a different trailer. Sometimes they have multiple trailers. So right. I didn't get to go actually sit in a movie theater and watch my trailer. Yeah. But in every other country, in Japan, Russia, China, like everywhere else the trailer played, it was my score in the movie theaters.
That's a road
So,
trip. That's when you need to just go to Japan and watch it in Japan.
I know, yeah, I needed a trip. I only made $500 off of it, but I'm gonna fly there and watch that damn trailer. Like,
$4,000 just to sit there for your 15 seconds of fame. Yep.
exactly, yeah. So again, maybe my point to all of this is that those little like windows, and you just get your finger in there, and then you just pry and like crawl your way through, and it's so much more about relationships. If you just send some tracks to Mibe or any of these big companies, it's just a small fish in a huge sea. It's just a drop in the bucket. So there's, it's like Cathy talks about the third door. There's just got to be like another way in. And I don't think it's as hard as, it seems. It could just be one relationship, one connection. And I was talking to a buddy last night who does a lot of scoring and stuff. He's scored and has cues on tons of stuff. And we were talking about this very thing, about getting your foot in the door and how to kind of get into all of this. And he kind of knows my story and stuff. And he always says, he's like, Sam, most of us composers aren't all outgoing like you and out there, like, trying to rub shoulders with everyone. And,
3 miles away from a trailer house. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He's and I think his point was he's very reserved, and he's not one of those active guys that's always, out there rubbing shoulders with people and making buddies and all this stuff. So I get that. I know, like, I'm kind of a weird thing that like every day I'm connecting with people like online, and,
You're here.
with Eddie's an example, and I'm just like, he's a big sushi fan, so he'll post a picture about sushi and I'll just make a joke about it, but all of that to say, it's just like, needling your way in there. It's just like little connections, being there. I always tell people, if you need something, I'm your guy. I've told that to Cathy before, like, hey, if you're doing something for Sync Keepers, or if you're need, help with anything, like, you're not bugging me, just, reach out to me, and same thing with John. That's how my relationship started with John. And there's a couple other people that I met through Sync Keepers that like, there's a guy, Gabe, and I've done a bunch of cues for him too, actually. He's a great guy. He's called Music and Strategy, and I got on his list, and I get all his briefs. Most of his briefs are not asking for songs, they're asking for cues. I turned in cues for a Ralph Lauren ad a couple weeks ago. I turned in cues for Milk commercial. I haven't landed a ton with Gabe yet, but I feel like it's right there. It'd be just a matter of time, and something will land. So Music and Strategy is his website. He knows Cathy really well. Capitalize on that, you guys. Cathy even says it. Reach out to one of these people. Go look at everyone that's been on a Sync Keepers panel, everyone that Cathy's all connected with, and shoot them an email. Sometimes I'd even put in the email, hey, it's Sam from Cathy's course or Cathy's program. Okay. Cathy Heller's program, right in the line, and those emails get read, and again, sometimes I keep it so short. I know Cathy goes through her whole thing of like, put a little, anecdotal thing, or like comment on the weather, or, pumpkin spice latte or whatever. I typically just say, hey, I'm a fan of what you're doing. Just reaching out and saying, if you need anything, or if I can, be of any help with anything, I'm here, and here's the things I do, and here's one example of what, I do, and stuff like that. That's really your way in the door. Yeah. Oh, there's Music and Strategy. Thanks, Pam. She put that in the thing. And that's Gabe. And he's a sweetheart guy. And he has placed music that was from Cathy on I think a couple of Cathy's big commercials, like McDonald's and a couple other things, have been through Gabe. So, and here's the thing is once they see and know like, oh, they're part of this and they're really doing it, you know, they see you in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not bugging them every, you know, week with an email, but it's just touching points. Like if I don't hear from some of these people for a month, I just shoot them another email, maybe attach one new little thing that I'm working on, you know, so they can keep hearing. Gabe became a fan of one of my side project bands. He just loves it. He's like, dude, if you ever put out more music with The Mad Professional, that's like a band that I made with a guy that I met in Six Figure Songwriting. He's like, if you ever put out more of their stuff, send it to me because I just like to listen to it. So, and then when he introduced me, he has got a team of people that places all the music. When he sent out the email introducing me to the rest of his team, he said, hey, this is Sam, a buddy of mine. He's in some cool side project bands, but he also composes. Let's put him on the email list for our briefs. He's a good guy to, you know or something. I was like, I got that email, like almost passed out. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like too good to be true, you know? So you can do this. You could totally do this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything else to say. Like you guys all got the, you know, you're already making music and you got those little cues and those little things. Just get them in a disco. Disco also, does everyone have disco? Who's already has disco AC? Yeah, you got to have it. It's just, you will be taken more serious when they see a little disco thing that looks like what they're used to seeing, just the way it is. In fact, you want a little in on another little secret. This was one of those things that I was like, oh man, this is so good to know. Backstage, The Last Seat Keepers, I'm in the green room and it's the gal that, gosh, what was her name? I should know it. It'll come to me in a second. She's got curly hair. She works for disco. And then it was Jenny from Rat Dance Music. And it was also, I'm picturing her. It's too early in the morning to remember all these names. It was like 2 or 3 music supervisors and the disco gal. And they were all just talking in the green room. And one person was saying, oh my gosh, disco has saved our lives as music supervisors. And they were all like, oh, you know, like just going on and on about disco. And then I was kind of eavesdropping. And one music supervisor said something that just like blew my mind. It just made lights go off, like ding, ding, ding. The music supervisor told the disco girl, I don't even go and look in emails or anywhere else anymore. I'm literally just searching my disco for songs and pulling them out of there. And so what I learned from that is if you have disco and you can link it up to the music supervisor's disco, when they go to search for music like Happy Pop Q instrumental, you know, Happy Pop instrumental at around 100 to 110 beats per minute. When they go do their little search in disco, if you're in the disco, they pop up and they move that track over to what the editor is pulling from, right? So they're not even going and looking in, you know, libraries because their library is becoming their disco. And so how do you get your music there so that when they're, like the girl said, when she types in something and the songs populate. And here's the thing is beautiful about disco is once you get linked in with someone else's disco, so like Gabe has disco for music and strategy, he has access to my disco. They're linked together. You can actually link your whole thing to a music supervisor, and then they don't have your music per se, like actually physically in their disco. It's just linked up so that when they type, you know, a swagger rock track at 90 beats per minute, your things just come into their little search bar thing. And that's where people are getting their music. That's where these music supervisors are now getting their music. So this disco is becoming the library. So you could go have all your music in MIB, I guess, and probably for certain, CBS Sports, they're probably, and actually, to be honest, probably CBS Sports music supervisor has a disco account, and probably MIB and him or her have like linked those. And so they're just typing in, rock track 90 beats per minute, and that everything that's like that is coming up, and they're just pulling it in, and the editor's like placing it in the thing. And what happens is it makes it super easy for music supervisors, because all the metadata is there. They can just print a cue sheet. They can literally, their job is just so much easier because they don't have to go through all that work they used to. It just all happens within Disco. So if I were to focus on anything, I would make all my different cues. I always say this whole licensing thing is like the stock market. The more stocks you have, and the more you diversify, the more that you're going to grow what you make off of all of this. It's compounding. Like, just the more tracks you get, and you have ones in different categories, all of a sudden you're going to get one license, you're getting another license, and that'll, like, it starts to perpetuate over time. Steve Cullum has, what did John say, 2,000 some songs, and they're
2,700. Steve says he's my pod member.
Yeah, which I want to see his I want to see his archive. No, I mean, I believe it. If you make if you make them in 10s and 15s and 20s at a time, and you do that year after year after year, you're going to grow your music. Like, I asked Steve one time, just one-on-one, I'm like, how many licenses are you getting, like, in a year? And he said, like, he said it could be over 100, in a year. So that's one's happening every week or every other week.
He says it's growing. He says the numbers keep growing.
Yeah. Eddie tells me the same thing. Eddie says he has songs, little cues he did like 10 years ago that they keep using on sports and for commercials and different things. And so it's just foot in the door, and then just like growing it. Like, once a couple things go, then, then it's like something that's like trending, like on Instagram or something like that, or TikTok. Once something gets trending a little bit, then more people have access to it, and it catches more with people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a perpetual thing. So, and I'm trying to do it too, and I'm like, up a little bit, but I'm hoping that it keeps going up. I'm hoping to get, further up the ramp. But yeah, little relationships and connecting points. Yeah,
It's like we got a couple hands there, Sam.
I took over the whole thing.
Cool. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam, for taking some time with us.
But there's these little things that like I didn't know 4 or 5 years ago, and like I would want someone to share it with me, and people have. A bunch of people have shared, this stuff, and I keep my little Rolodex and my little wheels turning with all this new like stuff I find out. Yeah, Neil, what's
we have to do like Big Brother and just have you like be on camera all the time, and then whenever it just comes in your mind, just let us all know, and we'll just.
Speaking of Big Brother, I have a younger brother, and his name is Neil. So
nice.
I'm already feeling it, man.
Come on, brother.
Brotherly love, yeah.
Yeah, I'm here in Nashville, so it's like everybody and their dog has a studio, so I should have no excuse. I still just am here in my room with my big old keyboard and stuff. But yeah, I love what you're saying. And I'm trying to, I guess some of us who are still kind of on the earlier stages, the relationship part is definitely where I'm going. And I'm actually talking with a guy here in town who's a friend of mine he's got some connections and stuff. I've had coffee with him last week. And so with that, I guess for me, the appeal of things like Taxi or Disco, which is newer to me, I haven't known much about that, but is that it's a good way to kind of at least get started. Because until, I get that conversation, whether it's online or in person with somebody, I can sit here. It's like, how it is when you got Pro Tools and these cool things. I mean, every time you sit down, you're like, oh, that's a cool thing. And, you should, I feel like I wish I could just drop, every time I sit down, just record a 30-second or 1 minute, music cue or something. And at least if I can learn how to get it into Taxi, if people are if people like it. I'm still trying to find out if that's something people recommend, but, or MIB or whatever. It's just something, because when you can just crank out music, instrumental music all the time, it's like, man, I just want to get it somewhere.
Yeah, and I like the thing about like Taxi and Song Trader and some of these other places is they're giving you a little bit of like what's needed, like the pulse on kind of what's going on. And if you can't, like at first I wasn't getting emails from people saying like, hey, we need this track and we need it by next, in 48 hours or whatever. I wasn't getting those emails, years back. So that came like over time. But the beauty of all those things is, again, that once you do start getting something like that, or let's say you go look on Song Trader and you set in your mind, okay, in 3 days, they want a track that kind of sounds like this. And you set in your mind, I'm going to do that, and I made that chase. I would stay up till all hours of the night just to turn something in, and I think there's something to be said for that because, many times, most of the time, I didn't land it. I didn't land whatever I was shooting for. I turned something in and I never heard back. But back to the stock market thing, I took all those tracks that I made for all these different things and slowly started to put them all in my disco and add all my metadata and make a little artwork to make it look kind of official. And now I can honestly say I've got some hip hop sounding stuff in there. I've got, I did a bunch of songs for one ad with a buddy I'm not a great piano player. And me and him did some like jazz trip hop, because that's what someone was asking for. So, and we made like 4 or 5 cues and they're really cool. So now I got those 5 cues in there. You know what I mean? It's just like go chasing after all that stuff and force yourself to do it. Like, take it serious, and I still sometimes do this. Every once in a while I see a song on, I'm not Taxi, but I'll do Song Trader or where else do I go looking for briefs? Sometimes if I don't have anything going, I'll go look for something and I'll just be like, all right, I'm going to make a track. I'm going to turn it into this thing, and maybe I don't get it, but every placement I've had so far was one that happened organically outside of pitching to a brief. Like I've had songs on, TV shows and commercials and movies. And it was that someone went and picked up something I had and it wasn't pitched. And all of a sudden I just got an email saying, hey, we'd love to use this song for this. And so, and it's like, yay, all right. I created that song for this thing and it got used, for that thing. Yeah. So again, the more you have and the more you keep aiming for and doing those things. Yeah, perfect. Tropical pop instrumental cues. It was actually for Song Trader. They were looking for a summer pop song and it was due in one day. And I went and busted it out in here and had my wife sing a song called Summertime. And I turned it in, didn't get used. And then it needed a little more work. It wasn't great. So I went one day and I said, okay, so I can say I finished this track off. I did a couple more things, finished it. I threw that and about, 10, 15 other of those like that into a folder. This is before I had disco. And I met a guy at the basketball gym and I was like, we were playing basketball and we were all taking a break for a second and just shooting the breeze with him and said, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I fly drones. And I'm like, oh, crazy. I love that kind of stuff, drones. So we got to talking more and he works for a company and they do the drone work for this and that. So we exchanged emails and I said, hey, I do music. If you ever need music to go with your drone stuff. And sure enough, like a couple weeks later, he said, hey, we're doing a commercial for a restaurant and they need some music in the background and looking for something fun, upbeat summer, kind of like pop song. And so I sent him a whole folder of stuff and that pop song was in there and got used on a commercial. Cool. So, but it was made for Song Trader, got used on something else. It's just, that's just how this whole game goes.
Sweet.
Great stories.
Question there, Neil, or do we want to move on to Jennifer because she's had it
Go
a
ahead.
little bit?
Oh, I'm not even seeing the hands. I guess I need to click on participants. Yeah. Oh, Jen's muted. Jennifer's muted. Oh, there we go.
Hi.
Yeah.
How are you, Sam?
Good. Awesome.
I'm so glad you popped on here. Man, you are just dropping golden nuggets all over the place. This is amazing.
I know, Sam. Great.
Yeah. Love to share.
Yeah. So, couple questions. How does BMI or ASCAP work with instrumentals tracks as opposed to singer-songwriter, and then in terms of you getting, if it gets paid, played so many times, do they keep track of that little cue or not? And also, would you also upload your cues in some way to Spotify? In searching for my sync things, my reference tracks, I came across a couple tracks by some artist who had several versions of her track, and some of them were like just short little segments, like 30 seconds, and then there was a break, and then another 30 seconds, and there was a break. And it sounded like she was driving people to Spotify to listen to her, to listen to her tracks there instead of like putting them on disco or something.
Yeah. Both those are great questions. So first, the ASCAP versus BMI thing. So I signed up for ASCAP 10, 12 years ago because of some like co-writers that were kind of potential things. And back then, one of the writers I was working with was giving me the whole, like, we're going to do all kinds of stuff. And, you got to get on ASCAP. I'm on ASCAP, and we're going to write, 100 songs and get them all this and that, kind of pumping me up to do some stuff. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I just ran and signed up with ASCAP. Later down the road, I was talking to a friend who now teaches music production at USC. He's in charge of the whole music production program at USC. And he's had songs all over, like you can't even imagine. He, in his studio, he's got the gold records on the wall. He did the first Pussycat albums, Dolls album. He's worked with Colby Calais. He did her Christmas album. So he's pretty deep. He works on a lot of stuff, but he also does music cues. He's had an Apple commercial. He's super deep in all this. And we got to going back and forth about ASCAP and BMI, and that's where I learned some things I didn't know. And I said, how come, all of our buddies, because he knows a lot of the same guys I do, are ASCAP and you're BMI? And he said, because of his composing stuff. So he feels and has come to figure out that BMI is a little bit better catching money for composers and people doing score and cue stuff than ASCAP. And now there's some tricks to it. And I've kind of had this happen once to me where I co-wrote something and it was 50-50 split, and I'm ASCAP and my writer was BMI. And they got a little bit more money up front because it was a reality TV show. So I went to ASCAP, and with one email, I said, hey, here is the cue. Here's a link to the cue sheet. Here it is. And my co-writer got $327 and I got $150. I mean, it was like a big difference.
Wow. And
ASCAP paid me the difference. They upped it so that we got the same amount. So there's a little bit of advantage to having a song that you co-write with someone else that's on a different cue. Now, so
apples to oranges, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And now you might think, well, then so does BMI pay more than ASCAP does? And that's not necessarily true. So what I've learned is, just from talking to a whole bunch of different people, is that they collect money kind of in different ways a little bit. And singer-songwriters tend to go for ASCAP because there's like a better system for them for collecting on a song that maybe gets placed that you know wrote, if you're like an artist, they're a little bit more like songwriter music with vocals friendly is what I've gathered. And BMI, especially if you're in the film industry, and I'm not sure all the details of it, but if you're scoring films, you want to be on BMI because you end up getting more money from it. And having said that, this is conversation I had, you know, with a couple guys like probably about 10 years ago now. Maybe it's changed, maybe it's kind of leveled out, but so that's my understanding is a general rule of thumb, and John Kleinbell won't say this in a group thing or anything like that. And part of it is us mentors probably, and John, you know, Cathy would tell us, don't be giving legal advice. You know, we're not lawyers. We're not, you know, on that end of things. So I say all of this with kind of this is general stuff that I hear from my buddies that do this for a living, is that like my buddy's name's Smitty, who works at USC, and he's been in the industry like, you know, 30 years and done tons of car commercials and movies and all kinds of stuff. He would say the general advice is, if you think you're going to be working on the film end of things and doing a lot of scoring, BMI is probably a better route to support you for capturing all that money possible and putting it in your pocket. If you're singer-songwriter that's kind of like, oh, I want to do sync now and get your, you know, songs in some TV shows, or I guess movies too, or commercials, and then, you know, maybe then they're on YouTube and Spotify and start trending, you know, and you want to capture all that, ASCAP does a little bit better job at that. And
what I've been told with ASCAP, you know,
yeah.
I've been with ASCAP since the mid '80s. ASCAP says you're going to get paid the amount of work that you put into it, so you got to be proactive in letting them know what's going on. They, you know, and that's probably true with BMI. BMI maybe have a better tracking way, and in reality, is like I have a lot of stuff on radio, terrestrial and otherwise, and unless they know it's there, you got to keep up to date with your catalog. They get every playlist by law. Okay, by law they have the access, and they sample. They still do sampling. You know, that's why it's important to be on Sound Exchange if you're an artist. Sound Exchange, they will pay you for anything you see digitally, and you know, and quite frankly, most of the terrestrial radio stations now are digital as well. So you're picking up that way, you know, and internationally, you're going to get that too. So it's the same kind of situation, but it's being proactive with your own catalog. And that's what I found with ASCAP. When I started being proactive, I started getting paid more. It's that simple. In fact, I don't even know, because I have an account. I live out in the West Coast. I have an account in St. Louis where my royalty money comes in. I never know when I'm getting paid, unless my bank says, "Oh, you qualified for the interest this month." I go, "I did? Oh, cool." So,
Rich, so what are the steps to being proactive? I mean,
well,
do you need to find out who's didn't submit cue sheets, and one of the troubles I've had is production companies not submitting cue sheets.
Right, exactly. You know, you need to know, you know, and listen to these taxi videos. They say, "Oh, I never know when my stuff's getting played, or it's been even cast, you know, until I get a paycheck." You know, and I pretty much know where my stuff is, you know, and you learn how to keep track of it. You know where you're sending it. You know, it may get, you know, stuff you'll miss, but if you're proactive and say, "Hey, this went out to somewhere," they might be able to find it. If you let them know it's gone out, you know, just let them know and say, "Hey, this is being considered for something, you know, keep your eye out for it." You know, and you know, the name ASCAP includes was the American Society of Composers and Publishers. So I mean, composers is in the title of the organization, but they do protect their publishers more than anything else. That's true. So that's my personal experience. It's not my recommendation. It's just my personal experience. You know, and that's all I can go by.
I think that's right. I think you're right. I think so much of that is right.
Well, Neil had to jump off. I didn't want to limit things to an hour. It doesn't look like we're being kicked off by Zoom at all. I know we have that appointment coming up in an hour for the guest music supervisor, Jody Fieldman or something like that.
Oh, that is a good guy to know. He sent some of my songs to a video game. I'm still waiting to hear back if they're going to use them. Yeah, you want to know him. And he's super accessible. Friend him on Facebook, on Instagram, and just reach out. He'll give his email today. He'll respond to you. He's a very interesting guy, because the first couple of times I met him, I felt like he was kind of like not listening to when you get to know him and stuff like that. Like now, like I run into him and he's like, "How's your wife and kids doing?" I mean, he really is like, and the other thing that's really interesting about him is I've sent him stuff in the past and he kind of like thrashed it a little bit. I sent him a couple things and he's like, "This isn't up to snuff for like my library." And so I was like, oh, you know, like you take those things, you know, to heart. And then
it ups your game.
Well, yeah. And then maybe like months later or a year later, he sent me a message on Facebook and said, "Hey, something you were playing the other day, I really like the sound of that. Can you send that to me?" You know, and I sent it to him and he's like, "Dude, this is really good. Like I could use a whole bunch of this." He goes, "Can you make more of these?" So, you know, it's like he's very no nonsense personality, but I definitely would highly recommend like getting to know him and connecting up with him, because he does like a lot of music and he grabs stuff and, you know, sends it out. Definitely a good guy to know.
Cool.
That's good.
Hey, Jeff, this is Jennifer. Before you click off, I'm on my phone and I can never seem to chat. I can never save the chat on my phone. Can you save the chat with all that awesome information in it and post it to the group?
I'm not signing off anytime soon. You guys are welcome to, if you need to or want to give yourself a breather between the two calls. You know, an admin kind of thing for us is, you know, I did set it for 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You know, I've had some people kind of push back and say, "Hey, that's a little too early for the West Coast folks." We can push it back to 1. I just kind of was, you know, copying what the folks did at the Pitch Club to pick a similar time, just a different day. So I'm open to things, and, you know, this is, you know, democracy. We all can kind of vote in ideas, and, you know, we're all gonna, like I used the analogy earlier, you know, I might have started the fire, but, you know, Richard had, you know, kind of spurred ideas to influence me to kind of get things going, but it's going to take all of us to, you know, add kindling and the big chunks of wood to keep this fire going, to help support each other and to, you know, encourage us and hold ourselves accountable. And, yeah, I posted. What's that?
I'm just really happy that you put this together. I'm both singer-songwriter and instrumentalist, but most of my things are instrumental. And even though I have a couple of really amazing professionals in my area, they're so busy, and I don't really want to ask them to, like, I don't want to shadow them, or I've spent some time in their studios and I'm just looking at what they've been doing for years, and I'm like, wow, you guys are like eons ahead of me. And so I feel like this is a safer group for me, you know, to learn my craft and just get better at it. So I'm glad Jeff, that you kind of got took the impetus to just to organize this in this way. Thank you.
Sure, I'm happy. You know, and some people find it easier to have more of an intimate group than it is with 300 people there, and you're just like, it's stage fright. You know, I'm already kind of starstruck having Sam on the call, but it's been wonderful having. I want your autograph, dude. But it's been great having that insight. You know, also Richard having his years of experience and all that kind of stuff. We're all just, I learned, I'm almost 50, and everywhere I go, even though I'm a realtor, I take tons of classes, and I take the same classes over and over again, and you still can get nuggets from it. It's like reading the books Rich Dad Poor Dad, or all these other things. You're gonna hear new things at a different phase in your life, and it's gonna really sink in for you. And so I just wanted to have an opportunity for all of us to be able to share in that. And also, we had mentioned before Sam got on, we're not dissing Cathy's program at all. We know that it's a fantastic program, teaches great business practices. We just, as instrumentalists, we're hearing more people with the songs that have lyrics being played and more pop type stuff, which is all good and fine, because we can still learn how to do some things, but it's good to be able to have folks we can talk to that have a similar background or similar interests, or even creative styles that even though we may or may not, because we all might be solo instrumentalists, may or may not be able to feel comfortable collaborating on the music side of things, we can at least collaborate in terms of our
knowledge base.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where's everybody located? That's
Los Angeles.
Okay. No.
Hey.
I'm about an hour from you, Sam.
Oh, from Whittier?
I've been to Whittier, and I'll talk to you about that later. The college there had these progressive rock concerts that I went to several of them.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Whittier College is like 4 blocks from me. I'm real close.
Yeah, I've been there several times.
That's cool.
Angelique?
I have a good friend that lives in Whittier. I'm in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, too, though, where a lot of Californians are moving up to, by the way.
Yes.
Affordable housing.
Ah, yeah, and beauty.
Okay, so Angelique, you're in Maryland. Okay, so you're just up the stream from me. I'm in the DC area out near Dulles Airport in Northern Virginia.
Oh, yeah, right on. That's awesome.
So Orlando, Florida. Cool. How about you there, Natalie? Oh, you said Utah. Gotcha.
I'm from Utah. Yeah.
Okay.
Right smack dab in the middle of the state.
I'm in Monterey Bay, California. So, paradise.
Beautiful up there.
Yep, 70 degrees. They turn on the heat mornings. They do. Seriously. Heat advisories at 70 degrees. It's like,
Wow.
I'm from the Midwest. It's heat advisory at 100 if you're lucky.
Well, I had just posted again. I had posted something at the beginning in the chat room of some thoughts I had before starting today's session, I guess. The group, I don't know if we want to change the name, Instrumental Pitch Club, or IPC, you know what I'm saying? But then we also have, some things that I thought might be mutual needs questions, things that we're wanting to be able to get help from each other on. We can mention our strengths and weaknesses so we can help support one another. Find out what our goals are and how we can achieve those things. Because like I had a guy in my small little group, Jack, he was kind of struggling just trying to connect his interface and knowing how to set up the DAW. We can be there for each other for some of that stuff, but then we can also be there for some of the stuff that Richard's saying. Even though we know we can submit stuff to Taxi or we can submit stuff to my we might find that we have to do kind of like what Sam's saying, and that is we have to, it's not what we know and who, but who we know, and we might have to rely on one another and pimping each other out, kind of thing. I might get an opportunity to have a brief come my way, and it's not going to work for me, but I can be like, hey, Pamela, I hear you're doing this kind of stuff. Can you do this tropical pop stuff? Send it her way, and then she might kick me back a little something. But that way we're networking too, and kind of doing like Sam's saying.
You have a couple things I'd like to say, if that's okay. But so first of all, before Sam got on and shared that wealth of amazing data, as you always do, Sam, thank you. So Steve Collum is the mentor for our pod group that I'm in, and he has spoken to us a number of times about diversifying and getting into various libraries and agencies. And so I can go through my notes and share some of that, but he probably would be open to hopping on with us at some point too.
He was someone that someone had recommended that he was a really big instrumentalist, and so yeah, I would love to have him on as well.
He is in
Tell him,
a lot of libraries.
tell him Sam said, volunteered him. Tell him Sam said Steve will do it for you.
All volunteers step forward, and then we all step backwards, and he's standing there. Is that it?
Put it on me. Say,
Hey,
Sam
thank you,
said
Sam.
would-
I feel much more comfortable with you volunteering him than me volunteering him.
Yeah, yeah.
Or we could just say, Sam was here, where were you?
We're still in bed, you guys.
So one of the things that Sam said, or sorry, Sam, that Steve said is that 90% of the cues are instrumental. And he's got 18 to 20 different agents between publishers and agencies, et cetera, that he works with, and he uses different styles for different ones. Anyway, I've been planning to go through my notes, and also planning to go through my notes again of the things I've been writing down that you've been telling us, Sam, and you even let me piggyback on your podcast before. And then I got hip to, I should go back and listen to everybody's podcast because Chris has got great stuff. Not podcast, you know what I mean, the pod in there, yeah. So it's a different subject. There is a production company, very small production company, that I've been contributing music to, and they generally don't pay for cues up front. But I have the theme song on 2, which turned out to be 4 of their TV shows, and which have done really well for me over the years, even though they didn't pay up front. So this was a relationship that cultivating my wife and I. In fact, she got in touch with you, Sam, about mixing for us upcoming, but we'll talk to you more about that. Cultivating the relationship with them and doing things for them that didn't pay much up front, but in the long run turned out to be really good. But back to this, so they're not paying for cues, and the cues don't necessarily pay much if they don't use it. So I might put in a lot of time on a cue, and I'll only get a few dollars for it because it was only in a few shows a few times. But that does what Sam was saying, that gets my chops going, gives me a chance to, for example, they wanted a Benny Goodman piece like Sing, Sing, Sing. I love big band music, but I have not, and I've wanted to get good at horn arranging, but don't have that much experience at. So I worked pretty hard. I put this piece together, and I think if I played it for the big band guys down here in LA, they probably think I sucked, but I played it for a couple of horn players, friends of mine. These guys are really picky, and they liked it. So I did okay. But I don't think I made much money, but here's a piece that shows, hey, here's something I can do in this area, and I want to get better at it. So one thing is the guy's been asking me for Nutcracker Suite. He wants holiday music, orchestral like Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky is one of my favorite classical people. And I just haven't had the time to do it, and it doesn't pay up front. But if somebody's interested, I would be happy to pass on and connect you with these folks, and because I want to flow power to those guys. I want them to have what they need and be
They want it
successful.
orchestrally? They want it orchestrally?
That's right. Tchaikovsky, Nutcracker Suite oriented. If I get some time, I'm going to do it, but I just haven't yet. I've got backlogs. I
got a solo piano piece I called Walking Through Toyland, or Marching Through Toyland. It's the Victor Herbert song Toyland with the Nutcracker Suite, the march blended together. And
share that in the Instrumental Pitch Club Facebook group, and we can hear it, and then if Tom likes it, he can pass it on.
Yeah, I'll give you my email address here as well, but I'm happy to.
It's solo piano right now though, so I'd have to redo it that way. But we'd also have to get credit, the Tchaikovsky's public domain, but the Victor Herbert is not.
Right.
So,
right.
So that's the other. I'm putting the title of a book called Demystifying the Cue. Read from the camera.
I like that.
Back. It's by Dean Krippain, and he's got stuff all over the place. He's got 3 books. This is one. breaks it all down. Okay, it breaks it all down on what to do. He's got stuff on Duck Dynasty, Oprah Winfrey, Parenthood, The Vampire Diaries, Dr. Oz, Say Yes to the Dress, Good Morning America, biography, enormous amount of stuff. So, and I'll give you a couple other books later, that I'm getting through, what is it? I forget. Write, submit, repeat, forget, or forget, then repeat. So those are two books that, I'm really liking the write, submit, repeat, submit, forget, repeat. I can get it backwards. But yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
It's a great book, and it also helps us to understand a little bit more what we're supposed to do. I got another book coming in, all about film music. I forget the author. I got it here somewhere written down, but it's all about writing for film. So
I love sharing those. And one tip in the other direction, I started ordering some books, and they weren't helpful at all. They were just people's critiques of what they felt about different styles of music in movies. So I'm going to be scoring. I'm going to be scoring a suspense/horror movie upcoming, and so I wanted to find out more and more about that genre. And several of the books I got just weren't helpful for scoring at all.
Well,
some of the others were.
One thing that Richard and I were texting about in Facebook message privately before this was to kind of start like even maybe a book club of sorts. I don't know if we'll take the time to actually dissect and go chapter by chapter through some books, but at least we can say, hey, that book that Richard just mentioned, that's top notch. You should go for it. Hey, the one that Tom was mentioning, that's shit. Don't spend a dime on it. That kind of stuff.
And some of these books aren't cheap, brand new, but you can find them. This is brand new, and I think we spent $15 on it.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the other books have a little pricier. The one that's coming in a couple days, the film music. Basically, it's a thick book. It's $75 new. I picked it up for $15. So you look around for it. You'll find them almost new, and they're good. So somebody's trying to call me. So, okay. Stop. Okay. But yeah, you can. I'll send you some of the. We'll put some. If we got a Google page or something, if we could do even a Google Doc somewhere where we just kind of add things as we go, as people. Free be able to do that.
Okay.
So this is specifically for books and references?
Or books, or just for references in general. We could, or even as an Excel spreadsheet or something where where the information could be put together. If somebody got something, you throw it on
I'll be happy to set it up, but I'd like suggestions as what columns to put in there, I guess.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you, offering and volunteering. Pamela had mentioned this earlier, and we found this on the other bigger pitch club group, that it was helpful to have some volunteers who were good at certain things like Excel spreadsheets and, Google Docs and all that kind of stuff. And just, we'll try to do as much as I can, but I can't do everything. And I have a learning curve because I haven't been so IT driven over the last several years because of my current profession, but I'm open to learning things. And
the one guy who created the Trello board, I started looking at that. The Trello board might be Trello might be a place to put something like this together. I don't know,
You have any experience with that, Tom?
I've heard Trello was great. Chris Bradley uses it. I signed up and I haven't spent any time. I'm having a challenge just keeping up with the volume of content for six-figure songwriting. So.
Amen.
But it's on, like I said, I signed up, it's on my radar.
Yeah. I'm still trying to connect my DAW to my keyboard. So,
John, I still haven't even heard the branding one. I got to listen to it this weekend. I missed Tuesdays. We were in a recording session, but John said a month ago that Trello was one of the things that he'd be covering. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are going to cover things like taxi and disco and stuff like that. So, it'd be nice to be able to kind of take the time to break down how to submit songs into disco and figure out how to fill in the meta tag data and all that stuff. Because I'm pretty good with some things because I used to do some web design back in the day when it was HTML, but things are a lot more different and more dynamic now. And like Sam was saying, it seems like disco is a really good place to put this stuff because you have certain categories when you fill in and host a particular, not host, upload a particular song, it asks you the beats per minute, it asks you a genre, it asks you the feel of a song, the tempo,
You can tag a lot of stuff.
yeah, and so I could see you trying to search a song under those categories. It'd be great because it really narrows down the field. But you're about to say more, Angelique?
No, I actually had a question, but I didn't want to interrupt because you were. Yeah.
Actually, I want to follow up on what Angelique asked earlier because I know what her question is. So if you're going to open that window.
Oh, no.
I believe.
Good question. Yeah, that I kind of want to open up to the group because like as instrumentalists and for someone like I know that I think all of us write cues and we have cues probably set up and organized in a file somewhere. Is anyone's like end goal trying to get, because I've done a little bit of research. I'm still finishing up school through Berkeley as well, so I'm like kind of balancing and juggling everything else. But like to be hired for like a TV show, they would have to hire you as a composer. Is that like an end goal, or is that an avenue that anyone's trying to pursue, or is it mostly for this group that like we're trying to just pursue it in a sync level, where we're sending out our cues to libraries and publishing agencies to get them placed, or is some end goals like trying to get hired by actual TV companies and movie companies to be a part of?
I can comment to those, but Jeff, you're leading, so.
Yeah.
Basically, we're all on our own journey.
Yeah.
We're on our own path. It's not that we're all going to vote that we're all just talking sync here and you're not going to have any interest and you may not want to join us and listen to whatever we're saying. We'll try to support each other where we can.
It was just a broad question.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a broad question to ask because I think there's certainly brilliant avenues on how to get our music synced. It was just a broad question.
Yeah. No,
So I'm trying for all of the above, and I would love to include information regarding being a composer for shows and how that. And I can just mention a couple of things. So my wife has a TV show. She's got an agent. It's really hard to get an agent to sell those. They're doing really well and it's looking positive. And it's nepotism. I get to be the composer for that. But the agent has repped other composers before. And so as I get to know her better, I'm going to be learning information from her about what it takes to get into that, to meet those folks. And so apparently it's easier to get in when there's an agent, but the agent has to have those connections, etc. It's just like the rest of us. You build up those connections. That's what makes a music supervisor's job strong. If they know they're trying to get famous artists placed and they know how to get to those artists, even though the artists don't usually allow their music to be put in a movie, they'll agree because they like this person or whatever. I mean, you can go to the Guild of Music Supervisors. So anyway, I would love to share that information as well. If Jeff, you think that's, and I think I'm hearing you say yes.
Yeah, I'm not tying anyone's hands. Please, jump on a soapbox and tell us because we want to all hear. We're all flies on the wall and we're just sponges and want to soak it all in.
Yeah, that was basically my question is, has anyone actually had experience ever working with or in a company like that where you're actually working as a composer on a TV show, or if that's like a goal, like how that could also be incorporated, because I think it could lead was really where I was going.
That's a good question. If no one can answer this here, I'm going to try rebroadcasting this online. So maybe if someone has any answers to that, they can reach out to you and DM you directly, or maybe to the group. So hopefully this thing will just kind of continue on past today's session and get you some answers. Because I know of someone who's in my small pod that is talking about getting into film composing. she's going to Berkeley as well. She couldn't join us because she's working today, but you know, she might be able to better answer that. I think she has a tie-in with Hans Zimmer or something like that. That she's eventually going to call in that card later on when she's ready for it. But
That's awesome.
yeah.
I have suggestions about those too, and it has to do with, or just ideas rather. But you know what Sam is talking about. He's always got these networking ideas. Steve Collum has shared his networking ideas with the pod. There are seminars. Now I don't know. Well, the whole thing about are you in that town or can you do something remotely? So right now there's a lot of seminars online. You can connect with people that way. But there are orchestration seminars. There's a guy, Scott Smalley, who has he started with Danny Elfman, the whole Batman thing. And there's this great history stories of how Danny Elfman and Hans Zimmer's, well, I'm going to go on a tangent, which is sort of the Sam Knaak disease of talking too much. So let me first get back to my point, which is that I went to this seminar and there were several people that had worked as composers for Hans Zimmer. And so you could get perspective from them, what it was like and what they got out of it. And one guy, why he left, because he wasn't able to move up. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just, that's what this guy said. He now wanted to expand further, so he left so he could have more time to do other things, but he got a lot out of it. Anyway, so if you can get into these seminars, you can then network with the people that go to those seminars and get additional information for them from them. And I'm just tell this one quick story. So this guy, Scott Smalley, and he had a brother who was working for for Hans Zimmer, and with Danny Elfman, he is a genius, but he didn't know how to orchestrate or write for orchestra. So he hired really good experienced guys, and he wrote melodies, and they turned it into scores. And by now, I'm sure he's an expert at all of it because he learned from all those guys and he learns fast. But that's what they were doing. He wasn't doing the movie scoring in terms of the traditional, here's what needs to be done. He was writing melodies and having guys do it for him. And they had to do it really fast and nobody got any sleep. And now Danny Elfman is where he is. He told his brother that's what he was doing. And his brother said to Hans Zimmer, hey, you know what they're doing over at Danny Elfman's? And so Hans Zimmer, I've been to Logic Users Group seminars many times in LA, and I met a lot of these composers, and some of these guys are disgruntled. Oh, Hans Zimmer, he's not a real orchestra. What good? He's got all the success, but he's not. He's just a guitarist. Well, you know, whatever. The guy's a genius. He did what he did. He built this huge empire. But when he was starting, according to Scott Smalley, it was a similar thing. He didn't know how to do all that stuff, and because Scott's brother said, "Hey, that's what those guys are doing." That's what they started doing. They brought in orchestrators, and and now I'm sure Hans is an absolute whiz at whatever you want to do. But anyway, just a story. And that was from one of the seminars I went.
Mm-hmm.
I got to run. We got a half hour or so before we get the...
Why don't we go ahead and call this one? That way we all can go to the bathroom, eat something, all that kind of stuff, do our hair up for Jody and all that kind of stuff. But,
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much. And Richard and everyone else. I'm excited about this myself.
Great. So same bat time, same bat channel, or do we want to push it to 1 o'clock so it's a little more palatable for you?
Well, I prefer 1, but I'll do 10. I'll do 12 if that's what everyone else wants.
6, 1 half a dozen. No.
9 works for me, only because it makes me get out of bed.
I hear you.
Even though I stay up too late, yes. Yeah, but yeah, I do kind of need to get up. So.
Okay, keep it at 12 then.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, at least we're not getting people up at the middle of the night like our Aussies and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
If you have ideas on what you want to include in terms of agendas or topics or subjects, included in the, the IPC, the Instrumental Pitch Club. I'll see you later, Richard. Or just bring it up.
Yeah, and then if you need administration help or anything, Jeff, or help figuring out Google Docs, I'm also a volunteer for Cinder on the other Pitch Club. So
cool. Yeah, and I think we're gonna kind of ride their coattails too, because it sounds like a lot of what they have there is going to be beneficial to us. We just might need to weed some of it out because, you know, we may not be doing country or rap or whatever, or we may be, and doing on the instrumental side of stuff. Well, let's all get off here, but nice seeing you all. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. See you guys in a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, hey, it was great to connect with you guys. See you soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye-bye.
Bye.